committee to order. The committee would like to welcome the audience. Viewers may watch live board committee meetings online at tcaps.net/board. Recorded meetings may be viewed on demand at the same address. The committee has set aside this time for public comment. Individuals addressing the committee shall have one opportunity to speak during public comment and shall be limited to 3 minutes each. Individuals should not make personal attacks unrelated to actions affecting the school system. We strongly encourage common courtesy and constructive feedback. Detailed rules and procedures, including a complaint process, are outlined in Board Policy 2504. It doesn't look like we have any public comment, Kelly. All right. We are at the draft meetings portion of the agenda. Are there any changes to the draft meeting minutes? No changes?
The only thing that I was looking at, but I think that someone was telling me it's already in here, I just can't find it, was changing the time. Something to change the time of the meeting, just to bring it 15 minutes earlier.
Yeah, we do have that on the agenda
Okay.
today for the
See where it
committee
is.
under item C, committee meeting schedule for 2025.
Yeah,
The
that
draft
was it.
schedule includes that. Yep.
Mm-hmm. That
Okay.
was the only thing.
Good. Okay.
Okay, I think we're good on the minutes.
Okay. All right, hearing no changes in minutes, so that will remain as posted. Appointment of committee chair. Nominations are in order for the 2025 chair for the board curriculum committee. Are there any nominations?
I nominate Josie Ballinger for chair.
I'll second.
Okay. It is determined that trustee Ballinger will serve as, actually, well, that's already the second, so will serve as committee, chair of the board curriculum committee for 2025. Thank you for the opportunity to serve as the acting chair. The newly appointed chair will now preside.
Okay. Thank you for the vote of confidence. Should I slide over?
You're welcome to, yeah.
Did we skip public comment?
We didn't have any,
No.
Didn't have
we
any.
didn't have
Okay,
any.
I was like,
but no, we did go over it.
Okay. All right, great. So we are now at the committee meeting schedule for 2025 portion of the agenda. So if everybody's had a chance to look at the draft schedule so far, are there any questions, comments, or concerns about the day of the week, the time of day, or particular dates at this time?
so dates are fine for me. I don't know about trustee Pack, but I was just gonna ask to come in 15 minutes earlier due to staff meeting I have that occurs at 10 o'clock. So
That's totally reasonable.
Yeah, if you prefer Tuesday. We used to have it on Monday, and then we changed it to Tuesday. So Tuesday, I think.
Mondays or
works okay.
Tuesdays are fine for me, so if anything works better, I guess it would probably be better to keep it here for most of the people whose schedule has already been arranged.
Yeah, Tuesday at 8:15 a.m. works for me.
Okay.
Staff all good? Okay, all right. So with that, we will turn our attention to the 2024 to 2025 TCAPS district course catalog updates. Ms. Houghton.
Sure. Let's see. Oh, here we are. So in the memo this month, you will see a few additions. For the high schools, it's pretty much standard what you guys see. We're at a semester changeover, so we've got some NMC or dual enrollment classes that we've added, new classes at NMC that our students are interested in taking. We've got some Michigan virtual, same thing there. We've just got kids interested in taking some of those courses. We haven't had that before. We are officially adding that AP research. We did find out it wasn't in the course catalog, and we want to get that on our selection sheets. That won't be running this semester, but we're interested in seeing if we can run that based on student interest enrollment for next year. And then we've got an Acellus personal, that's that ACL is the Acellus personal finance course that Ms. Choak will be running over at the Compass Learning Center.
Can we make that mandatory?
The personal finance is, all
It
students have
is.
to take
It
that to
is.
graduate, yes.
I don't remember
Yes,
that.
it is a
Yeah.
requirement now for all of our students to take, and it is an awesome class on,
Okay.
how to budget, what a loan means, how you do taxes, when do you have to file your taxes, actually it goes through all of those things. Great course. And then at the middle school level, same thing, Michigan virtual courses we run there as needed when kids have interest, but you'll see some Acellus courses there. We've got some interest in piloting some enrollment. I say the word piloting, but just sort of expanding that Acellus. We've seen great success with that into our middle school. It's West Middle School. It's got a student who's interested in doing some of those courses, and I think that'll give us a good trial run to see potentially in the future years, looking at expanding our virtual options for our kids and our families.
Can I ask, what's the introductory craft skills? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't have the details, but I can get those for you. The description of the course would be in the note in that memo that's linked there.
As in arts and crafts, right?
It is. It's under the art department on that one.
Because there's a ton of crafts out there.
And again, it's an MC class.
Yeah, I saw that.
And forgive me, since I have been on the finance committee for the last 2 years, but is
Yeah.
ACL a new-ish virtual platform for TCAPS?
Yep, that's the platform that we used this year when we opened Compass Learning Center. Ms. Choak will talk a little bit about all the work that's been done there this fall, but that was some of our investigation was what's the right digital platform for our kids who are fully virtual. Michigan Virtual is a great platform, works really well for our kids at the high school levels who just need like a one-off, and those tend to be AP or very high interest driven courses. A little bit of a different student population than what we're servicing through Compass Learning. And so Jen and her team did some research, and Acellus is something that is widely used not only across the state, but across the nation. And she'll talk more to sort of what that platform looks like when she will. Yeah.
Do you find kids taking things in real life in the school and then turning around and taking it again through an online?
Not
Like some of the math
typically.
classes?
Not typically. Kids don't typically repeat a course. A lot of it has to do with what's on their transcript and how the grades, unless it's the exact course, it can't get replaced and some credits. What we will see sometimes is kids who double up, like if you're talking math and specific, like a college prep, in addition to Algebra 2, and sometimes they'll do one of, not Algebra 2, but the college prep online to sort of shore up skills to get ready for that. Yeah, sometimes we see that.
And just to be clear, at TC West and TC Central High Schools, the personal finance class is all in person.
All in
right?
person, yep. The majority of our kids all take it in person in seats. We've got multiple staff members who teach that course, and yep, a curriculum for that and such, yep.
But to understand, they could take it by law, you have to offer,
They could enroll in this virtual option.
Correct.
Yeah.
The majority though take it
Yeah.
yes.
in person, yep.
Great. Any other changes or updates there? No? Okay. Then moving on to the board curriculum learning series under our informational items section of the agenda. We have our director of whole child systems giving us an update, so I will defer to Misty Warner.
So I'm excited to share a little bit about this project that we have been working on. Screenagers is a series of films that discusses concerns and issues around technology, such as social media, electronic devices, and screen time. This particular version is geared towards elementary schools. So Kel, if you would just click that, I have a little clip to show you, and then I'll talk a little bit more about the project. Right at the top, it's Screenagers. If you, sorry, that's okay. And then you just.
Not only does he have the iPad, he has the Switch, and then he has my phone. Can I see your phone? Okay, for 5 minutes. Okay, maybe just a few more minutes. I said 5 minutes. And then jump off the couch and tell me what a terrible parent I am.
I am trustworthy enough, but some people think otherwise.
How would you convince me to get a smartphone?
All my friends have it, I would be cool and be able to look busy in awkward situations.
We're having an issue with now is the wearable devices.
If I hear something buzz, I just don't answer it.
Honestly, I like to text my friend in the middle of class.
Teachers can't stand the phones. Their life is so difficult. The Apple Watches or other smartwatches can't get the kids' attention.
Kids, they're having trouble with sleep.
Researchers followed 9 and 10-year-olds. The kids who were insufficient sleepers had changes in their brain development. This is concerning.
The game industry has designed these games to become universes where these kids enter and they don't want to come out to do math. Who wants to do math?
It's really common for kids to have a meltdown when they have to get off their screens, their video games. The brain starts to think, oh, they didn't hear me. I need to get louder.
Imagine a child in a school hallway and he gets bumped by another kid. If he's been playing lots of violent video games, he's expecting other characters to be aggressive toward him. It becomes much more likely he'll assume the other kid meant to do it.
When teens move their social lives onto social media, the rates of anxiety and depression go up very quickly.
The future, it's too late, I'm addicted. I hear this. No, it's not too late.
The parent group of the friends that my kids have, we support one another.
I just text, hey, we'll have this play date, but please don't bring any iPad or devices.
I tell the parents, if you need it for communication and texting, buy a real basic, simple phone.
At school, we've all shared, I'm gonna try and keep my kids off of social media until 16. Yes, I'm doing it too. Yes, I'm doing it too.
A lot of the conversations are like the moms feeling, so we decided this, but all the dads are on board.
These rules are having a profoundly beneficial effect.
It's addicting, but
So we are working on creating a community event where we'll show the full version of this film. It will be held at Traverse City Central in their auditorium on March 3rd. I think doors will open at 5. The film will start around 5:30. This will be open to all TCAPS families that have elementary age kiddos. We'll be promoting at the elementary schools district-wide. And I have to give credit to a couple of our amazing social workers. Gretchen Evenhouse and Jill Wixel have really kind of stepped up and taken the lead on this project. And they are working to involve community members, parents, some other TCAP staff, some teachers. We also have a couple of our behavior and emotional support team members that have stepped up and joined forces to work on this project as well. So super excited about that. We're hoping to have a few prizes to maybe raffle off at the event. We're working on, hopefully by the end of the week, we will have the posters and the flyers done to begin promoting. So I just think this is a great way to bring our community together, to continue to bring awareness and create and encourage dialogue around this topic. So if you're free and you'd like to join us on March 3rd, please mark your calendars.
What time?
It's doors open at 5 and the film starts at 5:30.
And are you gonna do something like this in time for middle school as well?
So there was a Screenagers, the original version was shown and available to middle schools. I'm not sure they had a great turnout. It was kind of new, but we might circle back around and look at something like that for sure.
Yeah, because a lot of those kids, I think, also are facing the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so in terms of promotion, I mean, I know we're all big fan of supporting this effort. Can we make sure that all 11 elementary school newsletters to parents and students and staff gets out, disseminates the word along with our Facebook page, because that's the best we can do to try to get good attendance.
Absolutely, and we have all of our mental health team members that are in the buildings are aware of this, and we'll be pushing and promoting it as well too at each elementary school.
Is it on our Facebook page?
Not yet. Hopefully by the end of the week we'll have all of the flyers and stuff ready for social media and the posters ready to push out.
So we'll encourage support to share.
Yeah, absolutely. For those of us who are on Facebook.
And other things.
You know, the biggest demographic is middle-aged women, so we got a couple. Yeah, and I just want to say that, last year we presented at the Michigan Association of School Boards on cell phone use. It's really been a proud moment for our district and our board to have revised that policy a couple of years ago. So just keeping vigilant, watching the data, watching the student usage, and reinforcing that message to parents is much appreciated. Thank you for your efforts.
I just sent the link to that introductory craft class
Great.
description to you in text.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you.
so.
Be interesting to see what that's like.
Okay, so we are moving on to informational items regarding Traverse City High School. And with that, I will defer to Ms. Houghton.
Yeah, I'm gonna quickly pass it over to Ms. Choak over here. She's just done an amazing job this school year, her and her staff and the whole team there, on how can we reimagine this and really pull in and connect with some students and some families who have disengaged and haven't finished their high school diploma. And we know how important that is for all of our kids to reach that, and how do we do that in different pathways for them. So she's just done an outstanding job. So I will kick it over to her to kind of tell you a little bit about what's the work they've done and how things look a little different over there.
Thanks, Jessie. I think you hit on the head with our staff has really stepped up, and everybody has come together to make this happen. So I just can't say that enough. And so I kind of thinking about this presentation, thinking about last year at this time, how far we've grown, and really our goal was to say, how can we reach more students? And how can we remove more barriers? So the first thing that we really looked at was we only had last year in person, 100%, with a little bit of NMC here and there. But we look at this year, now we have 100% in person, which is a lot like last year, for in-person classes for each quarter. So they can still get 8 credits a year, which is 2 more than what you could get at West or Central. So that credit recovery is another piece that encourages kids to come back and say, I have a chance to finish my high school diploma. I'm going to come back to the blended there, but we also have 100% virtual with the Compass Learning Center. We'll get into that a little bit more, but that's where that Acellus platform is utilized. And students will take, right now, 4 classes for every quarter. We are finding that a lot of those kids will continue those classes onto the next quarter, a portion of those, which with our 18 credit diploma offering, we're finding that's okay to slow them down a little bit and allow them that time and support. On the flip side, some of the students are taking more classes. It's kind of a switch in the mind frame of they're in control. How fast are you gonna go? And we have mentors that will guide them through that. In between that, we have our in-person students, and it's a really nice offering that we have actually, this was the one that kind of surprised us so far, is this blended hybrid learners, where our kids that are 100% in person, one of the things that we struggled with in the past was we have a smaller staff, and so our class offerings are limited at each quarter, which limits when they can take certain classes that they need to graduate. In the blended scenario, some of the kids will be taking like 3 in person, and then every block I do have offered an online platform, but it's in the classroom with the teachers. Attendance is taken, and that allows students to take a class that they need and not have to wait till like the springtime to take it in order to graduate. So we are offering a lot of flexibility in that scheduling and what works for these students. As far as virtual students, because that's probably the newest platform and a lot of questions, all of the students have a TCAPS teachers that are highly qualified for each one of those classes that they can access and get for help. They're in the building. They can come into the lab. We will make sure that they are connected with that teacher. Some of them will do Google Meets as well if the students are off-site and they are stuck on a concept. And then each student has a mentor. And those mentors will check in at least once a week with those students to make sure they're making progress and to help plan what classes they're in and make goals for that week. The lab is open Monday through Thursday, 7:50 to 4:30. We extended that an extra hour and a half after when our traditional school is done, because some of the students work or they find the afternoon is a little busier actually. And then on Friday, we do not have in-person classes, but the lab is open normal school hours, and our in-person students are encouraged to come in if they are needing extra assistance. So there's lots of flexibility based on what the students need academically and extra support. And with that extra support, we do have tech support. We've worked really hard on getting that up and going. Our social workers, we were a little worried about our wraparound services with our our online or blended, but they're part of that enrollment process. And so those students are accessing our social workers, our guidance counselors, and we're still working on how to bridge that and make it more smooth, but a lot of the students are accessing those extra supports. And then we do have EL and of course our student support network.
Yeah, and I'll say too, like, Jen and I have worked together, like, we have a kid who doesn't have access to internet, cool, so we get them a hotspot, right? All the kids get the TCAPS Chromebooks. We've also had kids who wanna get in during those lab hours, but don't have transportation, awesome, so we get them a Beta bus pass, and she's really worked creatively to make sure there is really no barrier in supporting these kids and accessing their learning. And there's a little bit of like, hey, how you doing, and that reminder that is ongoing to keep that kid connected. We care, we're here, we still are here and, want you to get engaged and learn, so.
Yeah, and that was one of our worries, but we've really come together and found ways, and these students are accessing and we're finding ways to get them those supports that they need. So on the enrollment numbers, last year I believe we were around 135 in person. So right now, these are quarter 1, quarter 2, and then quarter 3 is as of Friday. We're still enrolling some students this week and smoothing that out. The 100% in person has been pretty steady, and then the virtual is increasing over the quarters. The blended might seem a little misleading only because those are actually our in-person students, but I thought it was interesting. Those are the number of the in-person students that are taking a one-off class in that in the SLS program while they're in school to help fill in those gaps. Our students come to us with transcripts that have holes all over. They might be technically a 12th grader but missing Algebra 1B. So we don't offer that until quarter 3 in person, so this helps to fill in that and get them back on the path that they need. So we have, again, that has been very successful in helping those students. And in doing that, our graduates are ready in first semester. We're 10 that completed, and we're projecting around 50 students. We're still looking to see with our ones that are coming into quarter 3, doing some transcript audits to see where those might fall. So that might be a little higher by the time we get done. We also have been really working on our dual enrollment and in general getting our students an opportunity to see what's out there post-secondary. And that's been a big focus. You'll see on the next slide, but NMC has been one that we've been working on. We actually had 8 students this fall dual enroll, which is actually a pretty good number for us, and those came from our spring dual enrollment program last year, and those students understanding that this is a great opportunity and wanting to continue. This spring, we have 25 students, and that's a pretty big number for us, and hoping that grows. And the students are becoming really excited. It's always fun to see them this past week, when they're like, I'm going to college and I'm a college student, and that's really cool to see.
Do the first semester graduates get to come to the end of year graduation we had in May or June?
Yes, and some of those, I think we had 2 of them that did walk last year, and they had to come back and finish up a credit or 2, and then the other ones will be invited in May to participate in that graduation ceremony.
Great. It's wonderful to see this growth at TC High. Thank you.
So some of the feedback that we've been getting with all of these new different scheduling, supports, opportunities, probably one of the biggest ones that we've already kind of hit on is the flexible scheduling. For our students that have all sorts of things going on, coming into our school with all different barriers, creating that flexible scheduling is huge. We've had students that started out, they were like, oh yeah, online sounds great, I don't have to come in. And then they realized, okay, that didn't work out for them in quarter 1, so they came back into in-person. We've had the opposite, where we've had students that were in person, life has happened, and so now they've gone online, and we do expect them to come back in quarter 4 for in-person. And then again, that blended opportunity for those students that are in person to take the one-off classes has been huge. What this has also done is create a lower class size for our in-person. We were pushing 25 30 in some last year. And the alternative education national organizations suggest 12 in person for alternative ed, and we're about there. And the feedback from students and staff has been just incredible about that. The climate, the culture, the feeling of being safe, being able to interact, have lessons where they can do group activities and discussions. So it's really increased the quality of education in the in-person as well. And our in-person passing rate has actually gone up, so that has been really good to see. The CLC, obviously, the Compass Learning Center has grown, as you can see by the numbers, and that has not only been in numbers of students, but also, I mean, physical space. I mean, little things like getting blinds or security, like getting a door bell so we can make sure it's secure. Has been a huge learning curve and a lot of support from down here to help make that happen. Lots of systems that we've had to learn, again, going back to that staff, just rolling up their sleeves and trying to figure out how to make this work seamlessly as possible for the students. So systems in place to make sure that students are being checked on weekly, everything from that to grades, making sure we have those in accurately. The big one that we're working on is balancing experiences. Again, it's kind of, it was a huge learning curve for us where we have been, a lot of our staff is pretty veteran, a couple decades there, and we're so relationship based. And then we go to this where these students we don't see them, or we might just see them once a week or hear them. So we're working on trying to figure out how to balance that and to figure out how to create a little bit of that experience for our online students. And then of course our remote learning has been a huge growth as far as numbers go. With successes, we've had a ton of successes and surprises, good surprises. We've had a few students that wouldn't even walk into a classroom at Central. They'd walk into our building last year, didn't really want to do a whole lot, but now I think in the first semester they finished 9 classes online. And they're coming into the Compass Learning Center every day to work on their classes. And I feel like that's a good balance for these particular students where they're not having to totally immerse themselves and go into the hallways, but they still have a comfortable, safe learning environment and they're in control of that pace and what they're learning. We've had a lot of students with that highly anxious, school resistant. They meet with our social worker, our guidance counselor, and this start last week, we had about 5 of those students who parents, their wraparound services have been really excited that they're able to come into the building. And our staff has just, like, I cannot stress that enough, been amazing. Just rolling with it and really being flexible, creative, and working as a team to get this done.
Great, any questions?
Yeah, we talk about NMC. Do we also do much with Career Tech?
Yes, we do. I should have gotten those numbers. I just thought of that. CTC, we do have a lot of students that are going there. I would say, if I'm picturing about 15 to 20 right now. Our students do okay over there. They love the programming. They do, in all honesty, kind of struggle with some of the structures that are put over there, and we work with them. We're trying to get them mentors as well. And with our guidance counselor, working really closely with CTC and monitoring those students' attendance behavior, we have seen more success this year with those students.
That's good. And then young parents.
Yep.
Do you have very many young parents?
They're starting, before COVID, we had a few, and then after COVID, we didn't have any showing up at our school. So we've been working with Generations Ahead and the regional Northern Michigan association that has, I can't remember the name of it, I'm sorry, but they have the early childhood there that is doing the daycare, and then early Head Start that's there as well. So we've been working with them, and we have 2 right now that are utilizing the daycare and then utilizing our school.
I had a question about staffing the lab. So I'm just really intrigued about how you staff that to, fully utilize your FTEs. Like, how do you manage the flow of the students coming in? And, is there a teacher possibly sitting there with nobody coming in for most of the day? Or, everybody coming at once? I'm just curious if you could unpack that for us.
It's a good question. It's been a learning curve.
It's been a learning curve for us.
And we're navigating it. I still think it's a little bit in flux, but we're getting there. We have a full-time certified teacher that's in there, and Mr. Livingood, and he basically runs the lab, meaning technology sign outs. Once the guidance counselor gives him a transcript audit, then is able to upload classes based on what they need. He manages, every student does need a mentor teacher or mentor staff member that will check in with them once a week. So he manages who's doing that, and then he has his own caseload of students that he's reaching out to. He also looks at connecting students if they're in a math class and they would like to set up a time to meet with a math teacher at I have 3 certified math teachers in person, and they're running some online classes. He'll make sure to coordinate that as well. And then we have 2 full-time staff members, they're teachers' assistants, that are carrying on that mentor role for our students. So students will roll in, throughout the day. And yes, there are times when there aren't students in there, but that doesn't mean because they're not physically there, they're not interacting with them on a screen. So it is that shift in thinking about how education takes place, because just because there's not right in front of you doesn't mean that on their screens they're full of students that are popping up that need tests unlock. Or in the Acellus program, you can interact with them through the Acellus, like messaging. You can do a phone call, like a video chat. They can help with answers and texts back and forth. So they're constantly doing that, and it's a pretty active role. It's a lot for them to manage.
But the lab is drop-in basis, right?
Yes.
The students don't have to make an appointment to come in and see them.
No, every once in a while, if they want a specific subject and they really want help in that from a specific teacher, then that would help. We have a lot of students that were in person with us and then went to virtual. And so they might have a connection with a certain teacher that teaches a subject, and then that might be more of it, but we'll accommodate them as long as they let us know they're coming in. Some of the students that are still a little anxious about coming in may make an appointment with their special ed teacher and then come in through the main office where it is a little quieter and have a room there where they can individually work. And they don't necessarily need an appointment, but we do encourage them to let us know when they're coming in to make sure that we're ready for them.
Thank you.
Cell phones. How do you manage cell phones in situations?
When they're in the school, they don't have them. Outside of school, that's a little harder because, but when they come in, we do still have them coming in to take their midterm and their final exams, which they do need to get a 70% on or better. When they enter the lab and they're working on Acellus, they do need to turn over their cell phones.
And do they put it in a pocket?
Yeah, then Mr. Livingood will put it in a pocket for them.
Okay. And then I remember at Central High School, when I first came up here, there was some kind of a classroom, and there was a teacher there, and kids were coming in to do online to make up classes that they needed to get to graduation. And then that whole process seemed to fall apart rather quickly and disappear. Is this somewhat similar to that model?
Well, some of those hybrid students are sort of what you're referring to, as Jen alluded to. Some of those kids come in with just holes all over their transcript, and it is like if she just has 2 kids who need a course, she's not going to run it. But then we can put the kids in this, and what we've kind of both figured out with the timing of the kids. First quarter, she thought it would be smart to try to put all of her one-offs on specific hours, and then all of a sudden she was like, well, that didn't work because then she had too many kids. So she's done a nice job sort of spreading the day, right? So that there's not an influx of kids at certain times. And I would say at both the high schools for credit recovery, that's sort of what they've gone to too. Instead of trying to schedule all the kids into one specific hour, it makes a bottleneck. They sort of spread the day and with those credit recovery kids. But we do still do that model like that at the high schools if kids need it too.
And I do try our best. I'm really blessed to have teachers that are double certified. A lot of them are highly qualified in like math and science or science and math, or I'm sorry, language arts. So like in our first hour block, we have our teacher that is highly qualified in math and biology. So any students that need credit recovery in those, I have them scheduled in that hour. And then another hour, I have language arts and math. So then I have them in there. So I have some flexibility, but they're in those blended credit recovery classes with highly qualified teachers. And those seem to be very, very successful because they're there, they're being monitored one-on-one. And that, again, has been one of the bigger surprises.
And so picture that room, that there might be 10 kids in there and that teacher, and maybe like 2 of them are taking Algebra 1, and this one's taking geometry, and this one over here is doing biology, and this one over here is doing environmental science. But because all the learning is through that platform, the teacher is in the support role, right? Able to coach as opposed to, I'm gonna stand up here and deliver content. Well, you guys all don't need the same content, right?
Right, right.
So
it was sort of like that in the other model. You know, the only thing is, it just seemed that some of the kids were getting kind of disengaged. There were social networks more than education in some cases. Not that I'm throwing stones, but you know, I just kind of noticed that it didn't always go according to
No,
oil.
it doesn't. But our in-person, our blended learning environment, the teachers have really worked together to create some policies in order to make sure that it still stays a quality learning environment. And it was a learning curve. First quarter versus this quarter is a huge difference when I walk into those. And I have to credit our staff again for working hard and wanting to make sure and ensure that it is a quality environment.
It's hard.
It is.
It's very hard. And then attendance. Is it more to make sure that you know that maybe it's time to reconnect with that kid more than it is, you know, so many hours of commitment in that subject?
Yeah, attendance online is taken through a weekly, what we call two-way communication, where the mentor teacher needs to communicate with that student. And if they don't meet that, then we start to put into interventions where I reach out to them and say, okay, we haven't heard from you. We might try to archive their classes for a little bit, and then they go, oh, I can't. And then we say, come on in, let's make a support plan for you and make sure that you're getting the help that you need to remove any barriers that are in your way. Sometimes we found out that they need a hotspot and we didn't know. Sometimes they need a little social work and SSN support. So really trying to connect with those kids and having those, you know, Mr. Living and the 2 extra staff in there has really upped our communication and quality of communication with those students weekly, if not more. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
So just some future thinkings and plans as we've kind of got this off to the ground. We feel really good about where our enrollment is. You saw we were, you know, close to 150, which is kind of what we anticipated.
Yeah.
As we heard feedback from the community. If you want to talk a little bit about Fridays.
Yeah, and just for enrollment, I did have run some numbers. We did have 27 that came from out of district. 15 were virtual and 12 were in person. So just to kind of throw that number out there. On Fridays, when our students that are in person aren't required to come to classes, but that Compass Learning Center is open, our staff does work with those students. But we also have brought in Bill Boyle. I think he's on 6 sessions for restorative practices and really working at how to help our students work through problems and restore their relationships. This is a big one, experiential and extended learning opportunities. We're working on next year, hopefully having it set up where on Fridays, students will have options to either go out in the community and get these experiences or to have extended learning opportunities that could be in the form of internships, project-based learning, any of those type of things. We have a guest speaker that's coming in from out east, Carolyn Eastman, and she has been wonderful helping us guide our staff on these Fridays, looking to next Fridays. I think our staff put it really well this year, where this year it's those Fridays are staff oriented to get us the support, and next year they're gonna be student oriented to provide these opportunities. And so one of our goals for this next semester, our staff is really working on within their classrooms, providing one of these opportunities for our students. So we have one, our language arts teachers are looking at partnering with the library. I have another teacher that's working on partnering with Michigan State Agriculture to do a plant, opportunity. So they're gonna start to work with those this semester, and then the hope is the goal is next semester or next year to provide those for in-person and hopefully online if they wanna take advantage of them. And again, moving from our teacher-centered to student-centered. SOS collaboration. Do you guys wanna tackle that, or would you like me to?
Go ahead.
Oh, sure.
Okay. I
So
can do
we've
it,
just been working hard. SOS is a learning center that's right up the road on Veterans Drive, a couple block and a half from here. They enroll about 235 students full time, and many of those students come from the TCAPS school district. So we've been in, Dr. Van Wagner and I have started meeting with them this last fall, just about like, how do we bring those kids back into TCAPS? How do we provide them the student support network services, the social work services, the crisis services, but also like give them an opportunity to reestablish that connection to their community. Right now, they're being served by a school district downstate, so they get like none of those extra services. And so we have now at this point, Emily would know because she's helping me register other students. I think we're at almost 10 students there that we've enrolled who will be fully virtual in the Acellus model. And they are gonna choose to receive their tutoring, their services through the SOS. We've hired a few of their staff members, they're certified teachers as well. Jen is overseeing them and working with them. And really the idea is then these kids get to reconnect and get a re-enroll with their local school district where they, should be, and are able to take advantage of our services. And yet if they're really feeling like there is some of these students are older, because this is an alternative high school, we have the eligibility to educate kids 2 more additional years than we do at the traditional high schools. And some of these kids now realize, gosh, I want to come back and get my diploma, but it's a little embarrassing to walk back into a high school building. And so this gives them the opportunity to walk into a building, receive all that support, receive the same exact curriculum and learning opportunities, and earn their high school diploma through us still. So we're experimenting with what that looks like, how big and how fast we can go with that. But we're excited about the potential. I know that staff over there is really excited for these kids to reconnect to their local school district and community. So.
Yeah. And it's exciting for our staff that last year we felt like we wanted more options for our students when we felt we couldn't reach them. And so it's nice that we have our in-person, our online through Compass Learning Center, and then SOS as well. We were working with them, but now it feels really good that they're part of us, and that we can provide those wraparound services still and keep those relationships that we've started with these students.
Does that count in our numbers?
It does, yeah. We're actually, this is that per pupil accounting for monthly costs, something that Dr. Van Wagner and I met with the state pupil accounting folks, and have found for the alternative learning, there is an option for us to do a monthly count versus the fall and the spring. So we're exploring that this second semester. There is some additional paperwork, learning plans that we develop with each students. Our pupil account officer here for TCAPS does an additional submission to the state. And then the thinking is that we would get that 1/10 of the student, and we're able to educate these kids. Some of these kids will come in and be with us on March, April, and May, and then might potentially drift back. But if we can provide them with the opportunity to get some credits to continue with their learning, and we're able to have staff and compensate and run for that, is kind of a nice win for both sides of it. And that's what this is set up. The state set this up with the idea that this is designed to re-engage kids in their learning and realize that these kids who are transient, sometimes school districts will say, no, we're not going to take you because fall count's over. We don't want to do that. We don't want to say to any kid, we're not going to take you because fall. We want to educate every kid who wants to step in and be part of TCAPS. And so we're excited about that. So we're going to give that a try.
Do we have kids that are seasonal?
Mm-hmm. We do. So we're looking to expand some course offerings too in the future, just so you guys are aware. You're going to see more of that. Jen has been really kind of pushing me with what her kids need and other opportunities that are out there through some of this virtual space.
Yeah, and possibly middle school. So we're exploring that and piloting some of those course offerings. Jesse hit on the monthly counts, and then really it's sustainable learning opportunities for all our students and removing those barriers as much as possible and providing as many opportunities for them to be successful post-secondary.
I had a question about how does TCAPS proactively bring this program to the attention of students and parents as young as 8th grade, as they're looking, to high school, going down a traditional path versus the alternatives that are offered by the Compass. And then even, when they get to if they do choose to go to traditional high school and they get to 9th or 10th grade and they're struggling, just so that we can be proactive and keep kids on track and not get into that credit recovery or, jeopardize their graduation.
Jen's got a great relationship with Joe Esper and Ben Berger, and she goes over to both of our large high schools and will meet with kids and their counselors. And so a lot of times if the students are already enrolled in TCAPS and we're seeing like, this just isn't a good fit, we've tried these different interventions, these support systems, it's still not working, they will call up Jen and they'll say, hey, here's the situation, here's what we've got. And she'll come like over and help sort of introduce the programs, give the opportunities. We really want this to be a commitment that I want to get a high school diploma and I'm choosing this opportunity, this environment. We never send kids over, right? That's, that kind of myth is out there, but it's really about how do we set this kid up to be successful, given all these opportunities. I would say for the middle school, as this gets going and strengthens, I'm looking down the table at my friend Mr. Howe down there, I think there'll be more connections with our middle school administrators as to, they know these kids too, they've had these kids for 3 years, and they know that some of our kids, you're exactly right, need a different environment for a lot of different reasons. And so we're gonna work on like, what would that look like? Right now, we don't start kids in person in 9th grade, but Jen did start some 9th graders virtually.
And they've been doing pretty well virtually. And I think part of that has to do with that idea that they were looking for an alternative way to receive their education, and it was student driven, family driven, and they came to us seeking that out.
Are there any nice brochures that
Not yet,
in
and we
development?
did do, with Compass Learning, we did do an enrollment. We did some social media and radio ads. We were a little cognizant that we didn't want to grow too fast. Like, we had a lot to learn, still learning. To be honest with you, I think we're larger than we thought we were going to be. Than we kind of even a little bit hoped. And so, a lot has been done with just very little in that aspect. I think now that we kind of have our feet under us and going into next fall, we're going to have to look at how much we want to do, and with capacity again as well, facility, all those things. So we've got some thinking to do there, and like middle school, I envision, possibly a second semester at one of our middle school, kind of replicating the Compass Learning Center, possibly. We got a lot of work to make sure we've got figured out what we have here. But we do know that there's a need of kids that are dropped out that are middle schoolers across our region. The only program that was there, Sutton's Bay ran a program, but now that they're out of formula, they have canceled their program. So we know that there is a need for it, but again, just not throwing, something against the wall and not thinking it through and knowing where we're at with all of it. We're not there. So a little bit the advertising part, Josie, has been by design because we had to figure out what we're doing.
And it's still growing. It seems like even
so
this year, we've got some more.
I think the important thing is with, for sure within our own ranks, that our own families know what that is, as an option. But I think we have some conversation to have if we want to go that far. Because like we had mentioned, even adding the 2 years, if you have a freshman that is 15, you could have a 22-year-old in the same room. That's a big, difference in maturity, and so that's what we're trying to figure out.
Hopefully.
Yeah, with SOS, I think they have a good specialization in catering that. They also though don't do middle school, So I think, all these things, we're still trying to figure it all out.
Yeah, and I wasn't, just to be clear, I wasn't trying to push a middle school program. I
Yeah.
mean, I agree with you, take a sound approach and
Yeah.
figure high school out first. But what I was envisioning was, you go into a guidance counselor's office here, you get the NMC dual enrollment or the early college brochures, the career tech brochures, so the kids and the parents constantly have access to this smorgasbord of options.
Sure.
So something like that
For Compass Learning Center, yeah,
Yeah,
I agree.
once you, kind of maybe get to the end
Now
of
we know
this-
what it is.
Right, maybe the end of this school
Everything
year,
Yeah.
For
For the fall
yeah,
especially,
yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah, that'd be really nice to have.
I'm super thankful. I had a son that went through a medical issue. I don't know if it was first or second year in high school. This was a while back, but we didn't have this option. So we had to use somewhere downstate, and it was awful, honestly. It wasn't horrible as far as the learning was concerned, but the lack of contact for me was the biggest issue. And so to hear that you have that regular sustained contacts set up locally is like amazing, and I love that. Thank you so much.
And if your Chromebook's not working, we're able to boom right away. That's one of the beauties that we're already seeing. Like talking with SOS, they're excited to have that kind of support where their support has been Metro Detroit area, before. So again, food pantry, those kind of things that many of the at-risk kids that are there, need as well. So that's why I think that they're excited. And so,
Yeah, we had to go downstate to test.
right,
Exactly. Like to do any of the testing,
Yeah.
and like with a medical condition, that just wasn't very easy at the time.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we got through that and got back into the regular programming, but to have this, would have been like amazing.
And those kids get career tech center too now
Yes.
at SOS. And they would have dual enrollment eligibility like our TCAPS kids. So there are like these components now. If we can, get these kids back connected to their local school district, they get all this other services. So.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for that
He's in college now.
thorough explanation, and we appreciate you bringing us up to speed.
Thank you.
Occasionally, as the program grows and develops. So with that, we'll turn our attention to instructional rounds, and I will defer to Dan Teisworth and Brittany Kay.
Awesome. So instructional rounds, a process that's not necessarily new to TCAPS. We've been doing this for, I think, over 10 years. Back when I was at West Middle School, there was a group of educators in TCAPS that went out to Boston, did a lot of the professional learning out there as far as the research behind how instructional rounds works. Some of the benefits of instructional rounds is shared ideas, focus on tier 1 instruction, and be able to collaborate around tier 1 with a purposeful focus. I think with tier 1, there's so many things coming at you as an educator and as a building leader. Sometimes it all gets kind of mixed together, and we struggle with focusing on one thing in education for more than sometimes 6 months. And I think what instructional rounds helps us do is to create a focus at the beginning of the year with the intent of it lasting at least a year. I know when I was at East, I found it extremely powerful to have this focus and having instructional rounds in the building as a building focus around a tier 1 area to actually last more than a year, which was, as an educator for almost 30 years now, when you do something for more than a year, it's almost uncomfortable because everyone says we're doing this again, but actually to build some momentum behind it, I found instructional rounds was very helpful in that.
Yeah, so when Dan and I took our leadership roles, it really was a request, I would say, not only by the principals, but also by the teachers that we bring back and really create a system in which they can engage in instructional rounds. So sort of what our system has looked like is that we've started with our 4 secondaries. So I brought Mr. Howe here as he's hosted a few out at East Middle School. He'll tell you a little bit about what that looks like. So all 4 of our secondaries were scheduled to host visits, about 20 to 25 educators from TCAPS. So think about across all of our different buildings, we get subs that come in. For those, we spread that out so we don't hit one building a lot. They sign up beforehand. They all come to that building that's hosting the site. The site determines what we host, what we're asking people to give us feedback on. They schedule the classrooms that they're gonna come in and visit throughout the day. And then they welcome those visitors. They do sort of like, here's what we're working on today. And then those visitors go into classrooms, collect data and information, and then come back to find some patterns and some information on that. Unfortunately, Poor Central High School, not only, I think they had the first snow day was their first rounds, and then the third snow day was their second round, so they have not hosted, but both of our middle schools and West Senior High at this point have all hosted visits. All 4 of our large secondaries all plan to host visits for anyone, again, elementary teachers, admin, from any of the buildings come and sign up and do this, yeah.
Yeah, and our elementary schools have started this year with our 11 elementaries doing an internal round. So as it kind of mirrors the same process as external rounds, but it's just the staff that's in the building, going around, going through the process with the idea that our elementary schools next year will start to look at the external rounds process, having people from middle schools, other elementary and high schools come into the building to go through the process. This year, actually, is today, after this meeting, Westwoods is actually the first elementary that's doing an external rounds. Toby was one of the educators that actually went out to Harvard and did the training, so we're excited to touch base with him after this.
It's a great opportunity for us to build community within our district. We have a large district, right? 16 school buildings, for our teachers to see each other in action, and be the professional and the expert to support the teaching and learning that we want. So it's been great that Dan and I have been able to develop a system to allow buildings to host and then engage in. A lot of times their buildings will go and watch rounds somewhere else, leadership team members, and they'll come back and figure out, okay, how can this work in our building? What can we benefit from? So I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Howe and let him talk a little bit about.
Quick, one more time. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
East
thank
Middle
you. Yeah, I just want to echo a lot of things, right? With instructional rounds at East Middle School, very similar to West Middle School, it's really been focused around collaboration, right? So we've had the ability to get people together and talk about teaching and learning, which has been very powerful. I want to thank the district staff and the board for creating time and allocating resources to do that. Part of my job as an AP at East Middle School is overseeing our instructional team, and the work of our team to get rounds up and running has been very actionable, right? And has been really impactful for not only our teachers, but ultimately the experience that our students get. So the history of rounds at our site, there's some data that's presented on there. Our coach, Allie Sullivan, did an excellent job when we first started this in fall 23 with student observations. We want to kind of get a state of the state on what's happening with our students in our classroom. She actually went through every classroom and made observations about what students were doing within our classrooms. Again, this was in fall of 23, so we've had a lot of growth since then. I would like to elaborate on two. The box that's highlighted there is basically the key takeaway. So we took this information back to our instructional team, had conversation, invited some outside specialists as well from Grand Valley State, and had conversations around developing our problem of practice. So we know what's happening in the room. We want to know what our focus is as we invite people into our building to collect observations to provide short and long-term recommendations to move everybody forward with a unified front with teaching and learning grades 6 through 8. So we noticed that many of our students were getting high quality instruction, but we wanted to focus on the academic conversation piece, opportunities to respond, and engagement. We found a lot of research that when students are not only engaged, but having conversation and strengthening their learning and overall experience across all grades and for all students at all ability levels, to look at the equity for all of our students having a positive experience. So we use that data as our launch point. So we looked at verbal and nonverbal. So the first set of rounds that we had was looking at having people come in and do observations around who's doing the talking, what's the product of that, what's the format, what's the development in the classroom, and what are students actually engaging in, focusing on their ability for responding. So we got a lot of great feedback with what students are doing in the classroom that our instructional team took back and provided planned instructional development for whole staff meetings, included some of that learning within our own PLCs, and had departments look at as well, so that we can continue to focus on academic conversation. We moved forward from that with feedback from our staff and students, and did another set of rounds as well with the same focus, our problem of practice, on academic conversations. So we invited members from West Middle School, West Senior High, Central High School, our own staff and career tech as well, to be observers within our own learning environment. They visited all of our classrooms between second and third hour. So we had all of our content area established in all different levels of programming, which I thought was phenomenal to get a full scope and sequence of what's happening in our building. We most recently had a rounds in October that was phenomenal. And again, just the planning that goes in that and inviting professionals in to get outside feedback is great. And then selfishly, anybody who's a part of our rounds, we have great conversations around something they take back to their building. So in terms of us being a collection of different teachers from different sites, everybody has something they can take back to their own building, their own leadership team to put within their own practice that they've seen in practice at a different building, which I think is really phenomenal. We constantly get emails back and forth from different leaders at schools and coaches about resources that we've had that we've shared, helped plan their own rounds process and collaborate with them as well. So back to the collegial piece and professionalism, it's been a huge shift for us at our specific site, but I know it's been very impactful for TCAPS as a district. Our last fall 24 rounds was phenomenal. We got a lot of information around the academic conversation piece, to Mr. Tyesworth's point about keeping with something for over a year. Our staff is incredibly committed to academic conversations and growing their own instructional practices with some intentional coaching from our instructional coach, but growing that practice. So this is now our second year of having the same focus and now moving to our March 2025 rounds that's fast approaching to support academic conversations with our prompting. So continue to grow and collaborate together. So to highlight where we're going next for this year, so this will be our third year with rounds, is our problem of practice. So we've moved forward with academic conversation with the idea that we want to continue to grow it within classrooms and give teachers the autonomy to build their practice where they're at and support them. So we're moving forward to prompting, looking at how different prompts and questioning techniques can help students experience deeper understanding, focusing again on that engagement, which was our initial launch in 2023, and how those prompts help students with their learning and critical thinking. There are 4 focus questions. Those focus questions are up there as just examples of what we give our observers to come in to collect feedback around, to have short-term and long-term feedback for the growth of our instructional practice. And as we go through this, just in closing for our rounds at East Middle School, the creation around our instructional staff meetings, supporting with the development of PLCs and our instructional leaders, and then using this as a tool to measure our progress and inform our decisions has been extremely productive for our staff and students.
I apologize, I have to leave for a staff meeting. So this is why I asked for the earlier one for next time. So thank you so much. I appreciate you all.
And I should have said at the top of the hour that Trustee Bird is new to the curriculum committee, so I wanted to welcome her. And Trustee Pack now is a veteran of the last 2 years, and I'm returning from 3 to 4 years ago. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Howe, I just had a question. Can you go back one slide to the responses? The opportunities to respond, OTR, right? So this, I'm guessing this is based on evidence, maybe in the Harvard study, that this leads to greater attainment of and higher student achievement. Yeah. Is that underpinning all this?
Yeah, when we looked at, so opportunities to respond, this was in concert with West Middle School as well, right? What is that instructional strategy that's going to have the biggest effect size, right? How do we get kids to have conversation and revise their thinking from multiple different lenses? So when we landed on the academic conversation piece, it's actually part of our pre-AP pillars that we kind of adopted with as well in terms of their thinking and understanding their research base, that this is going to be the best opportunity for students, right, to move their thinking forward for all students at their own levels across all content areas.
Yeah, and the Harvard structure, Josie, doesn't tell us what instructional strategies to target. It just gives us the framework as to how to run a day and do the observations and make sense of the patterning. And so, yeah, we lean on the sites, and we've worked a lot as a curriculum team as to what instructional strategy are they using and what was the research behind that too. So.
I would like to add too, as we went from fall of 23 to now, even being in the building and going through classrooms, the physical layout has changed. Students are within groups. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of work on vertical spaces and whiteboards. The delivery of the instruction and the overall experience for the student, I would say is just more engaging from a viewpoint, right? Seeing it, walking by the classroom, it feels different in a very positive way. The engagement with students is increasing, and just opportunities and experiences for a student to learn have really changed, not only with some of the feedback that we get from rounds, but just day to day being in classrooms, which has been really fun to see.
But that's the idea, right? As that's what our jobs is, teaching and learning, and student achievement is always part of that. So when we talk about what instructional practice are we going to look at using the information from the pre-AP model that's research-based, elementary school looking at explicit instruction, all 11 of our elementary schools are using a part of that framework, explicit instruction, for their instructional rounds, which then twofold then helps the conversations that elementary admin can have together, because we're all doing the same thing. And just on Mr. Howe's point, I mean, selfishly, the people that go in for the rounds, I know they get the feedback so the school can improve their practice. But leveraging our own professional learning in TCAPS, right? We have an incredible set of instructors that work daily, and we often look for professional development outside. Jesse's done a great job with Title II dollars, and how can we use those internally to improve our own instructional practice just here in Traverse City. So the other information you get just going into a building that we don't have the opportunity to do if we didn't have a structure around it, right? What are the processes in the actual building? Like just walking around, as far as how do they transition between classes? What's the pacing like in the classroom? What do they have up on their walls? Just different strategies that each principal or each leader, instructional coach, can take out, or just kind of secondary bonuses.
And this is for you to say, but I would just guess that it might even be more challenging to get the secondary students to respond than elementary. Because I mean, in my experience, elementary kids are so enthusiastic and, raising their hands, and then you get to middle school and high school and it's like, no, don't call on me. But I was just curious if you had any responses, like how you differentiate for those two audiences.
Sure. I would say even so, I've had the opportunity to be with my group of students since 6th grade, right? And then build those relationships with the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade staff. So I've had the chance to see some of that. When we talk about our academic conversations and some of the coaching that happens in our staff meetings, there are some targeted areas for our younger students in 6th grade as they transition into 7th and 8th. What you see in the classroom is a little bit different. Some students are more reluctant to share out, but I would say the commitment to having our instructional rounds and our instructional learning together, providing specific resources for teachers to try and use on that student population, has been a key takeaway, because 6th grade and 8th grade are different in terms of the students and their ability level and maybe where they're at socially in their development. Allie Sullivan's done a great job of developing a lot of resources and providing targeted coachings for different grade levels of students to make sure that we don't find students who are reluctant, or there's not a lot of conversation in 8th grade compared to 6th grade when they're really excited to share. I would say it's fairly similar, 6th through 8th, in terms of students wanting to be able to share, which is great. And I would also say it ties back to that shift in just the physical layout and what are those experiences and what are those opportunities where it's really hard for students to maybe kind of be disengaged or hide back. They are being encouraged to participate, and then the teaching and planning around those activities really promotes them wanting to share and celebrating where they're at and providing their voice within the classroom.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Burwinkle and to talk a little bit about what our elementaries have done with internal.
Good morning. So I'm the principal at Long Lake, and I'm excited to be able to share how this kind of has been rolled out at the elementary level. And I've asked Danielle Oster to be a part of this too. She's our instructional coach at Long Lake, because her work is highly embedded in this process. And like what has already been shared, instructional rounds it's professional learning, but it's not scripted on exactly what you do. And that's the joy of it. You have some say as a building on what you want to hone in on. And at the elementary level, our teachers are required to be experts in so many different fields, in every subject area. So to add one more thing can seem daunting, but the joy of instructional rounds is it's embedded. It's what you're already doing, and it's an opportunity to gather feedback on what you say is important in instruction. The past year at the elementary level, we have talked about explicit instruction, opportunities to respond, and we've really dug into the strategies that help students to engage in their learning. We know from research that a student sitting and just listening to the teacher teach doesn't they don't absorb it. They need to be engaged in what they're learning. And so through the explicit instruction focus and instructional rounds, we're able to gather feedback on, we've learned these other strategies to help engage students. Are we actually doing it? And are students gaining information from that? And that's what we've done at the elementary level. Again, everything is tied together. So it's really important that we're slowly rolling this out, because it can be intimidating to have people come in and observe you. And so that's why the elementary have started with an internal rounds process, because we're teaching two different things. We are sharing the instructional rounds process and the way that is done, and also still digging into explicit instruction and opportunities to respond. So in doing those together, it's important to have everybody a part of that experience. So at the elementary level, when we did internal rounds at Long Lake, every instructional staff member was a part of being observed and observing. So everybody had that experience of having someone come in and gather feedback from their teaching, and the opportunity to go in and see somebody else doing the work as well. And it's just a springboard from what we did last year. So our teaching staff really identified what we wanted to dig deeper into. So we learned about explicit instruction. We talked about opportunities to respond, and that's that engagement, those engagement strategies. And it's not raising hands. It's actually how do you ask questions to be able to see visibly how students are understanding the content, and doing that very strategically. So we surveyed our teachers at the end of last school year, and we identified the area we wanted to dig in deeper, and it was opportunities to respond, and that was based on teacher feedback. And then that's what's great about the coach. She then does the day-to-day work to help our staff understand explicit instruction and be able to practice those strategies and gather feedback. So, we have, at Long Lake, I have 2 new teachers, and so they didn't participate in explicit instruction last year. So Danielle's been really instrumental in helping them to catch up so that they're just as meaningfully connected to instructional rounds as the other staff members. So I don't know, Danielle, if you don't mind sharing just a little bit about how we took what we did last year and rolled it into developing a problem of practice.
Yeah, so this is the 3rd year that coaching has been around, and every year it just keeps getting better. And this year, I saw the need to really focus coaching in order to support building and district initiatives. So, and then also knowing that instructional rounds was coming up. So this year I developed like a smaller menu of choices for teachers to work on, and it all directly supported what needed to be supported. So it was either opportunities to respond, science of reading, or proactive classroom management. So all teachers were kind of living in there, and teachers are excited to dig into OTR. So most people did choose that. So I was able to just do the day-to-day work, the day-to-day supporting, classroom observations, all sorts of things there to just kind of support teachers with their journey along OTRs, moving from calling on raised hands to trying out a whole variety of ways to elicit responses from students. And we know that research shows that when you're delivering new content, those OTRs should be like 3 to 5 per minute. And that sounds like a lot, but breaking that down for teachers and planning with them in order to do that. So coaching just worked out really well this year, because knowing that we were eventually going to be observing each other in January, which we did, kind of moving back from there, I was able to just support teachers as they tried this stuff out, giving them additional resources, observing them and giving them feedback. They observe me and they give me feedback. I set up co-observations so they could observe the teacher down the hall. So it was kind of like laying the foundation and the building blocks in order for them to feel like more confident and successful when it was time to do instructional rounds.
So as a building, the way that instructional rounds works is you identify a theory of action. So you say, if our staff does this, then this is what we should expect from our students. And then we identify some guiding questions to really hone in the people who are visiting so that they know what they're giving feedback on. And so at Long Lake, we said if our teachers increase the frequency and variety of OTRs, then students will increase their active learning time and the percentage of students who are engaged will increase. So obviously that ties into their ability to understand content. So we wanted to see, are we using a variety of different strategies? What strategies do we use and are there patterns? Are we leaning towards certain ones and is there a reason for that? And then how does that translate to student engagement? And so again, we developed this problem of practice, but then we had to train our staff on like, what does it mean to go in and observe? We don't want teacher names in your data that you're collecting. We really want a broad understanding of what that looks like at Long Lake, because our hope is that we look at this data, we identify patterns, and we say, okay, this is our next level of work. And that's the joy of, the middle school secondaries. They've been doing this for a couple of years. So your problem of practice evolves and it gets deeper or guides you on your next steps as a school building. What I've been so grateful for as a leader in our district is the opportunity to have subs so that we can do this work. And like Dan said, like this is really important professional learning as a staff that's so much deeper than it would be having a visitor come out and do a presentation. Because we're involved, our teachers are highly connected and they're learning as they're growing. And so that's been really helpful. I was fortunate to be principal at Long Lake in 2015 when this first started and went through that training, which was very detailed. There was several days of training, and I feel like TCAPS has done a really nice job of balancing that because the cost of that was really incredible, where now we're still able to do this process, but it's not as costly or as time consuming as it was when I was involved initially. So we did this internal round process on January 9th, and then we were able to use early release time and a staff meeting to then look at the data and identify patterns. So those are the two photos you see here of teachers transfer the data they collect onto Post-it notes, and then their table shares out their data, and they look at it and try to identify what patterns do I see in this data? What is it telling us? And then what are some questions we still have with this data? And we were able to debrief as a whole staff and create some ideas and guidance. And then we have a leadership meeting next Wednesday that we then take that feedback and identify the next steps specifically. And so Danielle has done a lot of the legwork of like collecting the data, looking at the data, and she has some ideas of what the conversation will look like at our leadership meeting next week.
Yeah, so we did, after this process of the sticky notes and the identifying patterns and everything like that, we sent a survey out just to see how teachers are feeling about this whole process, because it has been a lot of work. We have been talking about this for months. The schedule was an early release day that everybody got into everybody's classroom, and it was chaotic, but it was a lot of fun. So we wanted to see how teachers felt and was this worth it? And so survey results said that 100% of the teachers said that instructional rounds was a good use of their time. 100% said that the expectations were clear, and 100% said that they reflected on their own practice as a result. And then also thinking specifically about our learning and focus on OTRs, 100% of teachers said that OTRs has improved the quality of their teaching and the level of student engagement. And I thought that was pretty remarkable. And it reminds me back to this session when we were doing the diving into the data. A couple of teachers said, well, what does the research say? What's the best OTR? What does the research say? I just want to know what the research says so that I can do that thing. And I think it shows that this is the research. We're doing the research right now, that the instructional rounds is a method to test your theory of action. And now we have this data to support from observations and feedback that we now know that we can increase the level of student engagement in our classrooms, and we have patterns and categories on how to do that best. So I thought it was a really, really positive experience overall.
We anticipate our focus next to be on feedback. So we're using these strategies. How is that information helping guide our practice? And are we using different strategies based on what we're trying to seek as feedback? And then our goal is to hopefully do an outside instructional rounds process moving forward at that next level of work.
So I just have a question for Ms. Oster. Based on the staff feedback, a lot of positives that you just reported on, were there any areas for improvement that you identified through that staff survey?
Well, speaking of feedback, so the last question was, where do we go from here? And from my observations, and I agree with the teacher feedback, is that feedback is an area of, not an area of concern, but a next level of work. And what I mean by that is, after you elicit a response from a student, what does the next teacher move after that? Like, how do they provide feedback to the student? Because I think we were able to identify as a staff that we're doing OTRs. It's happening in every classroom, every day, in every lesson. Students are very actively engaged, but how are we confirming or correcting their learning as they go? I think that's a natural next step that I was hoping was going to come out of it, and it did in our survey.
One thing that's a big part of our practice at Long Lake is just using data to drive what we do. And so we use surveys a lot. And I think we've done surveys ahead of all of this and sensed hesitancy from teachers of, I don't want to be observed. I don't want people coming into my room because they're going to point out everything I'm doing wrong. And we're all self-conscious on that respect. And so the way that the feedback changed afterwards was really encouraging, because I think our staff realized the value of this and that it's not so scary having somebody come in your classroom, and that you gain just as much by observing other people to gather new ideas for your practice. So.
Excellent.
So the end goal is not just teacher and student satisfaction, but
growth and I mean, ideally we want to better our craft as teachers and educators. We want to hone in on the best strategies to teach students so that equates to academic achievement. And when we started digging into explicit instruction, we recognized from research that students who struggle with executive functioning skills, being able to focus, being able to organize their thoughts, being able to subside maybe, just other thoughts, that can get in the way of learning. And that explicit instruction strategies helps to mitigate that. And so we want to make sure that we know as educators which strategies to use at which times in your lesson that are going to give you the best return as far as academic achievement.
And so also looking at across the board student involvement and basically, hopefully, a quieter, more disciplined, more cooperative classroom.
Quiet doesn't always equate to that.
Well,
sometimes
you
loud
know
learning
what
is
I
good.
mean.
Classroom management, those elements.
Nobody's going to be throwing a chair to make noise.
Right.
I think as adults, you always refer back to what's comfortable, and we were taught very differently than what is required of students now. And so oftentimes as educators, we'll fall back to the raised hands, and that strategy is not best practice anymore. And so you want to balance it, and some of these other strategies are much more effective in being able to identify exactly what every student is thinking on the content, not just the kiddo who is comfortable raising their hand.
And I'll have more questions
sure.
as we go along on that. I mean, not at this particular time.
Yeah. But I mean, I know what you're getting at with the student behavior.
Yep,
exactly. We've talked about that a lot as a board, as a district.
Kids act out for different reasons.
I think it goes hand in hand with engagement. I mean, that's what we talk about as far as if the students engage in learning, they're not engaged in something else, right? Because they're
in theory.
Well,
yeah,
I've seen
theory.
Kids
I mean,
doing amazing things that probably would be frowned upon.
Which, like I said, not necessarily quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I've seen other versions.
That's always a go-to interview answer. Is what are you going to do about student behavior in a school? Student behavior is hand in hand with engagement. It starts with instruction in the classroom.
And if they're engaged, they're not bored.
Yes.
And because when they're bored, that's where you slip into the negative behavior. Well, thank you for all this. I just wanted to ask one question because Mr. Tysworth, you mentioned at the outset that TCAPS has been doing this since 2015, but then there was a break, right, before we brought it back in 2023. So approximately what years, I can't look at Dr. Van Wagner because you weren't
Wasn't
here.
here.
I
But
think it
what-
might have started a little bit because I was at West Middle when we started, so if we go back, more than 10 years ago, it was about halfway, I was 8 years at West Middle as an AP. So we started then, were you at West Senior at that point?
Yeah, I was at Western, I went to Harvard, and that's why I got 2015, because I just looked how far back
Sure.
in my Google
I
Docs I could
remember.
find stuff.
But then there was a break, what,
There was,
2018 or
and I
so?
think part of that was funding as far as trying to figure out, because the process of everybody doing external, then the sub costs, that's what I remember, and obviously, then we ran into COVID, but I
When
know
it used to be a 2-day experience,
Yeah.
remember, it used to be if you went on rounds, the first full day was spent being trained and learning about the other building, and then the next full day was visiting, and that just it was too much of a restriction for the system that we have. So we've worked really hard with our principal leaders who have engaged in this, all of our principals have, as to how can you get a visit in one day? Cause like that's doable in our system, but still making it meaningful and effective and do all these things we wanna do. And I think both Mr. Howe and Ms. Burwinkle have talked to our effectiveness on that. And financially, Dan's correct, we're paying for it out of title funds, which is professional development funds. And we're really hitting a wide scope of, kindergarten teachers all the way up to our 12th grade teachers. We also have friends at Career Tech Center, and they host visits there. Some of our staff members have gone on visits there, and some of their staff come and visit, especially our secondary schools. It helps with that connection too, for us to see what they're doing, for them to see what we're doing. That's been really a nice partnership as well.
Okay.
Shout out to Brittany K too for holding the poster in this picture.
Dan and Brittany were able to join us for the debrief at Long Lake, so I had
You're
to
welcome.
add that in.
So, two practical questions that won't probably be answered today, which is fine, just putting them out on the plate. One of them is costs. If we're going to be looking at cost reductions, not expansions, thinking about how this fits in with that, thinking how this fits in with class size, the whole 9 yards. And then the second question has to do more with coordinating it with the community. We've had a question come in from some parents that we're looking to see half days show up more close to the weekend, not in the middle of the week, because parents that are working other jobs are having childcare issues. And so, given the teacher satisfaction is so high, do you think they'd be willing to do things like this on a Monday rather than over the week? Just open-ended questions to think about.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some flexibility on schedule. I hesitate just moving any half day to a Monday or Friday because of attendance.
I
Just
understand.
first thoughts I have about it, but budget-wise, it's nice because it's not gen fund. So if we're not taking out general fund, we have flexibility with our state grant with Title II as far as how we spend that money and budgeting. So it's nice that we can work within our professional development as far as attending conferences, but really focusing on what we can offer here and not impacting necessarily into the general fund with as far as class count or that ratio or personnel. This is actually a separate budget from our general fund budget.
The other thing, especially when it gets nicer, it's harder to get subs on Mondays and Fridays.
I hear you. Yeah, but having been a single parent, working long hours on a schedule that was important to show up, I couldn't stay home with my kid.
Yeah.
It becomes important too. So I'm going to speak for the nurses out there.
Okay, well, thanks so much. That was an excellent presentation, and really appreciate you bringing us up to speed on that. And also thank you for the invitation to observe the instructional rounds at Westwoods Elementary today. So I look forward to seeing that in person myself. Okay, yeah, moving on to celebrations and successes. Mr. Tisworth, Ms. Houghton, bring it on.
Sure, yeah, we're just gonna ping pong back and forth here. So first one is our East Side Choirs. They won a radio competition, so they will be presented today with a $1,000 check to support that program. So congratulations to those students and directors there.
Cherry Knoll got a library grant for $1,500 from our TCAPS Excellence Endowment, so they will work to improve their library collection with that money.
And then just this past Monday, a week ago, was our celebration of Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So some pictures there. And then we found out a week ago or so that the district did receive a grant from the Grand Traverse Regional Community Foundation to help us purchase the instructional materials that were used on this day. The books for those elementary classrooms, some copies, some of that stuff. So we thank the Grand Traverse Community Regional Foundation for that grant.
Do you recall offhand how much that was?
It was $1,000, yep.
And similar to what Jesse just said about our celebrations as far as Martin Luther King Day, also in our elementary school, she mentioned the books that went well. We provided all those materials, actually went through the lessons here at board curriculum. Everyone did the same lesson, and we got some really positive feedback.
This is again a big shout out to our music program, which we know is amazing, but a few of our directors here were highlighted at the state level for their expertise, and we wanted to make sure we could publicly thank them and just brag a little bit on having them as part of our instructional crew for our kids. And then just kicking off the robotics team, I know we're getting excited here we'll be hosting at Central High School in March, and we'll get you guys all that details, but there's a photo of our West team.
Also celebrating some music, Miss Rucker at Montessori. Wanted to give a shout out to Miss Cress Smith and Mr. Stephen Bollinger, just are dedicated at Montessori for their orchestra and music classes.
And then here are some of our West Middle School Titans who just really go above and beyond, and we're celebrated on their social media for some of these awards that we do at our secondaries to tell kids, hey, we recognize you, and we value you, and we see you, and we thank you for your contributions to making our communities better. So.
It's really just neat to see those on social media because I some of our previous Panthers, yes, exactly.
And a few that go, ooh, I'm glad they're doing good, right?
Yes, exactly.
Partnership at Blair with NMC. Nick Nestle, the president, visited Blair to talk a little bit to our Blair Bobcats about the opportunities at NMC to become a Hawk Owl someday. NMC has a nice partnership with Blair with the Leadership Academy, so he was able to come in, I believe did a book and talked about some character traits.
And then I know many of you guys have bought purchase items from the central marketing class, and then they always give funds back to a local business that they wanted to. So here they are receiving their check, and they were able to present a check to Northwest Michigan Supportive Housing with some of those funds. I think the check was for, I can't see that.
It was 300 something.
Yeah.
I had to zoom in on it.
Yeah, and that's what the kids chose. They always choose a local nonprofit to contribute some of their funds back from their business sales. So,
but do the students, where do the rest of the funds go?
So they also sell stock in their company, and they're only people have a cap as to how many shares of the stock, and if the company does well, then you get a dividend back on your stock. It's always a really good investment. They only let you buy 2 stocks, but I highly recommend it if they ever offer it.
The students can make money even after they graduate?
Only if you buy the stock, and anyone can buy the stock. They set to sell the stock that then supports their company. If their company makes money, then you get you get your money back from the stock and a dividend if you've made money.
Do they do a prospectus to the financial class?
I don't know, but I know the same teacher who does this business class teaches a lot of those financial classes too. So sort of that idea of, hey, the business is over, you get your stock back and a little bit, or if they lost money, you don't get your stock money back.
But a little prospectus would be fun for good practice.
And then last year is our Indigenous Education at Elementary. We have a new assistant, Lydia Hennion. So Lydia Hennion, instead of previous years, what they would do is they would have a schedule where they would go into various elementary schools for a couple of hours to service Indigenous education students. Now we've done a different format where we have one elementary teacher assistant that goes into an elementary school for a full day. They do the east side schools 1 week, the west side schools the other week, and then they continue to rotate. One thing they do is that not only do they work one-on-one with our Indigenous ed students, but they also push in the classrooms to really infuse some of that cultural component into our social studies curriculum that already has a natural connection with some Michigan Anishinaabe-Woan. So this is just one video here. We're working with a kindergartner.
Wait, why do they all have different names?
So this is the name for the bird in English, and this is the name for the bird in Anishinaabe-Moan. So we have cardinal and Miskobaneshi. Can you say Miskobaneshi?
Miskobaneshi. Wait a minute.
That's great.
Yeah.
Miskobaneshi.
Wait, why do they?
That was the last one.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
I
Lots
have
of
another
celebrations.
question.
Yes, yeah.
Sometime I'd like to hear a presentation on foreign languages in the schools.
Okay.
And have we ever looked at Anishinaabe language as a
Yes.
foreign language?
We have as a world language.
Yes,
World language. So we
exactly.
actually have had that conversation with the Grand Traverse Band Tribal Council about doing a competency-based program. And so I know we meet every year, so I know that they're working on trying to develop that curriculum and have that, and that it could be done in a competency-based way to award credit. So we have had that conversation with the tribal
That is
council
cool.
on trying to make that work.
And preserving languages, I think is important.
Yep.
Yeah.
We did that too at West Middle, again, going back to 2012, where we did have Anishinaabe-Woan 1 and Anishinaabe-Woan 2 at the middle school for high school credit.
That
So
is
we're just kind of bringing that back to where we were.
You know, it's hard sometimes with so many requirements to get enough enrollment, but if we can do it in a competency-based way outside and award credit for it, that's a way to be able to do it. So we have had that conversation. Ball's been kind of in their court to try and develop all those curriculum resources and stuff for it. They do have a teacher in mind, but you know, they've been working on that, but we should have an update soon here on kind of where we're at in that process.
That'd be cool. I could even see them do it like a club. And where
After
you
hours and
only-
get that, exactly.
Yes, you
Right.
only speak the language
Yeah.
in the club.
And that's what we've talked about, yeah.
Sort of immersion.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there'd be
Thank
some
you.
state funding for that, I imagine. What about federal?
Never even seen state funding for that, to be honest with you, yeah.
For Indigenous education?
It's something that we could possibly apply for a 2% grant with, you know, the Grand Traverse Band, but we're kind of, you know, waiting a little bit. We wanted to, you know, ensure that they had the opportunity to influence that curriculum to ensure, you know, the rigor of it and all those elements. And so once we have that, I think we could take a step further to look at, you know, because it could be something even that the Grand Traverse Band runs. And that if they can just provide a portfolio and assurances of certain measurements that we can then award credit for. So, but like I said, that has to be fully developed for that to happen.
Yeah.
Great, well, thank you. So many exciting developments underway. I appreciate all of you attending today and giving us this level of information. Any other items? No, okay. Well, then I think that we can call this meeting adjourned shortly, but first I'll just announce our next board curriculum committee meeting will be held Tuesday, February 25th in this room, the administration at Glen Loomis building, and we will convene at 8:15 a.m. So thank you, everybody. We are now adjourned.
So not